مرحبا وأهلا بكم في برنامج داخل واشنطن. معكم مضيفكم روبرت ساتلوف. الانتخابات كلفتها باهظة إذا يتعين على المرشحين دفع كلفة اللافتات الدعائية والإعلانات والفنادق والسفر، استطاعات الرأي وأجهزة الكمبيوتر، إضافة إلى رواتب الكثير من الأشخاص من خبراء العلاقات العامة والمنسقي العمل المجتمعي وكذلك منظمي المؤتمرات. في الحملات الرئاسية يمكن أن تصل الكلفة إلى مئات الملايين من الدولارات. أما في حملات الانتخابية للتنافس على مقاعد مجلس الشيوخ أو مجلس النواب فالكلفة تصل إلى عشرات الملايين. أحد أهم الأسئلة في مضمار السياسة الأميركية هو من يدفع هذه الكلفة؟ متبرعون من الأفراد، شركات كبرى، وكلاء أجانب أم الحكومة الأميركية نفسها؟ لمناقشة تفاصيل تمويل الحملات الانتخابية في أمريكا يسرني أن أرحب بواحدة من كبار الخبراء بهذا الموضوع المهم وهي ماريان كورندر. Welcome back to Dakhel, Washington. Well, we're gearing up another presidential election season, and that means we're gearing up another fundraising season to pay for those campaigns. And to discuss campaign finance in America, I'm delighted to welcome Mmarian Corinder. Welcome.
Thank you.
So let's talk about money in politics. About how much money was spent on our last presidential election campaign?
Last presidential, about $2.5 billion. And that's if you include the money that the candidates themselves raised, along with all of the money that the outside group spent.
Wow, and when you add in the congressional, the Senate, and the House elections, how much was spent?
That was another, I think the total there was about $5.5 billion.
So you put it together, we're talking
massive amounts of money.
$8 billion. That's a lot of money. What does all that money go for?
A lot of the money goes for the things that you would imagine it goes for. It goes for television advertising, get out the vote campaigns, social media. A lot of it goes towards hiring consultants and staff to run the campaign, paying rent on office space that the campaigns operate out of, all of those things.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about where that money comes from.
Yeah.
Can you give our viewers a broad sense of what the rules are for who can donate to a presidential campaign?
Okay. Any individual can donate, who's above the age of 18 can donate to a presidential campaign. An individual can donate $2,800 of their own money to a campaign. They can donate unlimited amounts of money, though, to super PACs that support presidential campaigns. So there's two different avenues where you can give. One's more regulated than the other.
All right, so let's stop for a minute. This
Okay.
is a word that probably doesn't translate well into foreign languages. What is a super PAC? First of all, a PAC is a political action committee.
Right.
PAC. What is a super PAC, and how does it differ from whatever a PAC is?
Okay. So a political action committee is a committee that's operated by a corporation, a union, an organization. So Exxon Oil could have Exxon PAC. And I, as an individual, can give $5,000 per year to Exxon PAC, and then they can give money, $5,000 to the candidates that they support. A super PAC is a political action committee that engages in what's called independent spending. So their spending is not coordinated with candidates. So the way that works is I'm an individual, I can give directly to the candidate, I can give to a political action committee supporting the candidate, and then I can give to a super PAC. To the super PAC, I can give as much money as I want, but that super political action committee cannot coordinate its spending with the campaign in any way.
So how does that work in practice? Why would I give to the Marian Corinder super PAC?
You would give to the Marian Corinder super PAC because you loved me so much that you wanted to see me get elected, you had already maxed out on what you could give to my campaign. So you had given $2,800 to my campaign. The law says you can't give any more than that, but you really want to see me get elected and you have lots of money to give. So you give $1 million, $2 million, $100 million to the super PAC supporting Marion Kernder, and that super PAC can then run ads on my behalf, say you should vote for Marion Kernder because she's the best candidate out there. They can get out the vote on my behalf. They can do all kinds of things. The only key is that they cannot coordinate with my campaign. So the people who are working on my campaign cannot talk to the people who are running a super PAC supporting me.
And does that really work in practice?
No. There's a lot of gray area. So a lot of candidate campaigns, for example, share a treasurer with super PACs. So the treasurer who's running my candidate campaign might also serve as the treasurer for a super PAC that's supporting my candidacy. And that's considered okay as long as that treasurer does not coordinate between the two. So it's as if the treasurer has two separate jobs, working for my campaign and working for the super PAC supporting my campaign.
So it's unlimited amount of money to a super PAC.
Right.
Very limited money directly to the campaign.
To the campaign, yes.
And what about transparency? Are there rules about whether campaigns need to let the world know who is funding themselves?
Yes. So any contribution to a candidate campaign that is over $200 is reported to the Federal Elections Commission. And so by law, that is disclosed. So if you were running for office and I gave you $199, that would not be publicly disclosed. If I gave you $200 or more, that would be disclosed. Super PACs also have to disclose their donors so we can see who is giving to those political action committees.
Is there any way to give money to a campaign and it not be disclosed?
Yes. That is a category of spending that here in the US is referred to as dark money spending. And how that typically works, say I have $1 million to give to a candidate who I think would do a great job and I really want to see that candidate get elected, but they're pretty controversial and I don't want anyone to know that I'm supporting that candidate. So I know that if I give $1 million to the super PAC supporting that candidate, my name will be disclosed as giving $1 million to that super PAC. So the way around that is that a lot of these super PACs have affiliated nonprofit organizations that do not have to disclose their donors. So I could give $1 million to the affiliated nonprofit organization. The affiliated nonprofit gives $1 million to the super PAC. The super PAC discloses $1 million contribution from the nonprofit. So my role in it is not disclosed because the nonprofit does not have to disclose where they got the $1 million. And the super PAC is legally disclosing that the $1 million came from the nonprofit.
So from the outside, it sounds like there are a couple of really big loopholes that could let all sorts of undocumented, secret, vast amounts of money into our national campaign system.
That's right. And right now it's perfectly legal. There have been moves that the nonprofits that engage in this kind of political spending, they're regulated by the Internal Revenue Service, not by the Federal Elections Commission. There have been moves to try to get the Internal Revenue Service to disclose who is donating to these nonprofits, to open up the system so that we can see those contributions. But the Trump administration has said that they do not have to disclose.
What was the famous Supreme Court ruling, Citizens United, all about?
What Citizens United did was open up the floodgates for this corporate spending that we see, unlimited corporate spending and spending by unions. Prior to the 2010 Citizens United decision, corporations could not spend out of their corporate treasuries, so they could not spend corporate funds supporting political campaigns. They could set up these political action committees where they could, raise money in the amounts of $5,000 per contributor and contribute in the amount of $5,000, but that was all they could do. In 2010, the Supreme Court ruled in the Citizens United decision that it was an infringement on the free speech, the rights of corporations to express their political opinions through their through giving, through political giving. And so the Supreme Court said in Citizens United, corporations, unions can spend unlimited amounts of money supporting candidates. The catch is that they have to spend that money independent of candidate campaigns. So they can't make $1 million contribution directly to a candidate, but they can engage in this independent spending that's run through the super PACs.
So essentially it gave corporations and labor unions the same free speech rights as individuals.
Exactly.
As people.
Right.
And this is still a very controversial view, is that correct?
Yes, it is. I mean, we've seen since the Citizens United decision just a tremendous boom in the amount of this independent spending going on through these super PACs. So, for example, in the midterm elections last year, in the 2018 elections, there was about $850 million in super PAC spending. In the midterm elections before that, in 2016, we saw less than half that amount spent. So somewhere around 350 or so was spent. 350 million was spent through these super PACs. So there's just been a tremendous boom, because if you're a donor and you have $1 million to give and you've sort of hit the wall on all of these other ways to give, you've maxed out to the candidates you support, you've maxed out to the political action committees, but you still want to give, going through these super PACs is the way to do it.
And just so our viewers know, what was the largest donation in the last cycle that we know
I'm not sure about the largest donation. Sheldon Adelson, a big Republican donor, he spent about 125 million of his own money in the last election. So
that's a substantial
a
sum.
lot of money. Yeah, yeah.
All right, when we come back, we're going to discuss what the state is of public funding for our elections and what the candidates themselves are saying about who they're going to take money from this time around. In just a moment. Again, my guest today is Marion Currender. Marion is one of Washington's leading experts in the arcane world of campaign finance. She's the author of Money in the House, Campaign Funds and Congressional Parties. And she is the co-author of the textbook, Congress in Context. Currently with the Washington think tank, the R Street Institute, on their governance team. Marion previously served as a senior fellow at the Government Affairs Institute at Georgetown University, and she taught American government at the College of Charleston. I just recently filed my federal income tax form, and I checked that box, which sends some money for public funding of campaigns.
Right.
Do we have public funding of campaigns with all this money that is going into our campaigns?
Well, technically there is public funding for the presidential campaign, but what we've seen in the past couple of cycles is that the candidates reject it, because if you agree to accept public funding, then you have to adhere to limits on your spending. And so the calculation that former President Obama made when he ran for his first term was that I can raise more on my own than opting into this public finance system. And so I'm just going to say no to public financing and no to the limits placed on me by public financing and raise as much as I can. And so since he set that standard, that's what most of the candidates have held to since.
So just to be clear, this is not a Republican or Democratic issue.
No, not at all.
Major party candidates of both parties say no thank you to public funding.
They don't want to be held to the limits that public funding holds them to.
And is there a suggestion just to raise the limit so that public funding would make it would be worthwhile to take public funding?
There is not. I think that the thinking is that there's just no way that public funding could ever reach the level that the candidates themselves can raise.
So what's happening to that money that I'm checking off in my box? It's just sitting there?
It's being put into an account. Should any candidate come along and decide that they're going to use it? I mean, we do see candidates. Last time around in the the presidential, a lot of the Republican candidates, there were so many of them, they opted into public funding as they were running in the primary, and so some of them can get money during the primaries if they qualify, but once they hit the general election, they have to make that decision.
So we hear candidates of both parties boast about the number of small donors that they get. Millions of people give me $28 or $16 or whatever it is that for real? Are there large sums of money that are coming from ordinary Americans, and how does that compare from the sums of money that are coming from the wealthiest Americans?
Right. There are. I mean, this has been an interesting phenomenon, and we saw this take off again with President Obama in his first term. He really figured out how to work this small donor system to get people to contribute repeatedly, and that's sort of how you first reel them in. You get them to give $25 to your campaign, and once they've done that, you go back to them a couple months later and ask for another $25. And so that's a way to keep people who are supporting your campaign interested and on your email list and following what you're doing and following you on social media and all of those kinds of things. And so so since then, other candidates have followed that pattern. But we have seen a huge surge in small donors. That said, though, donors who give $200 or more, the donors that have to be publicly disclosed, they make up 70% of all of the money that goes to candidates, because they tend to be the wealthier big donors spending big money on campaigns. And the donors who give less than $200 make up 30% of the overall money that's going into campaigns.
So are there rules governing whether non-Americans can contribute to our federal campaigns?
Yes. You cannot contribute, foreign people cannot contribute to American campaigns.
And does that include corporations?
That's a that's a tricky question.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. Going back to what we spoke about earlier with these nonprofits that are affiliated with super PACs, where money can be hidden, kept dark, kept secret. What we've seen happen is that money comes in from foreign corporations into those political nonprofits. The political nonprofit makes the contribution to the super PAC, but that original source of money coming from a foreign corporation is kept hidden. So some of those, there have been some incidents that have been caught by the Internal Revenue Service of that, but there are bills currently being considered in Congress to try to figure out how to fix that, how to ensure that doesn't happen.
But currently, there's really no way. If there's no transparency, there's no real way to know.
Right. And I should say that last year, the Internal Revenue Service does not disclose who these donors are, but they do track them, and the point of them, of the nonprofits having to at least report to the IRS who is giving them money, is so the IRS could determine that there's no foreign money coming into these political nonprofits. Last year, the Trump administration passed a rule saying that the IRS could no longer collect that information from nonprofits. They considered it a privacy issue. And so this raises the question now about where the money is coming from, because if the IRS isn't collecting this information, then we don't really know. If the nonprofits do not have to report it, we don't really know where the money's coming from.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When most Americans think of lobbying groups using financial power to impact campaigns, what are which sort of groups, as it were, which interests spend the most money in federal campaigns, Congress as well as the presidency?
I would say that if you look at the sectors of the U.S. economy that spend the most, you find pharmaceutical, healthcare, the oil and gas industry, the real estate industry. They're all big spenders. One of the most powerful lobbies that we hear a lot about in the U.S. is the AARP, the Association of Retired People, because it has everyone in the country that is over the age of 60?
55.
55.
55. I get the literature.
As part of their lobby. But interestingly, they don't give money, yet they are one of the most powerful lobbies because there are so many people who belong to them. The National Rifle Association is another lobby that are big contributors and give a lot of money.
Marion Currender, thank you very much for explaining these issues to our viewers.
Thank you.
I appreciate that there are people who are looking into ethics and finding injustices and correcting them. And I find it a little distressing that some would be so adamant to try to prevent that from happening. And I think it's reflective of a larger issue that's going on in the country right now, of divided politics and opinions and things, and not enough people getting together and actually talking about things.
One key question in modern politics is who funds the very expensive process of elections. Politicians don't buy voters anymore, that is, but they do buy lots of advertisements, polling, phone banks, videos, and people to make all this happen. A lot of people. This adds up. In 2016, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, and the other candidates together spent $2.6 billion on their campaign. In 2020, the figure will be even higher. Throw in every Senate, congressional, and governor's race, and the sum is astronomical. Who pays for this? In 2010, the Supreme Court ruled in a deeply divided case, Citizens United versus the Federal Elections Commission, that corporations and labor unions had the same legal standing as people and could therefore contribute to political campaigns the way individual citizens themselves contribute to campaigns. This transformed the American political landscape, opening campaigns up to the treasuries of America's wealthiest corporations, not just its wealthiest people. And other laws allow many of these contributions to be secret. I fully support the idea that candidates should rely on contributions from their supporters to fund their campaigns, not rely solely on government funding. But I join with millions of my fellow citizens in the call for campaign finance reform. I believe Citizens United was a mistake. Thomas Jefferson wrote that all men were created equal, not that all men in corporations were created equal. And we certainly don't extend the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to Coke and Pepsi, Apple and Amazon. I also believe that all donations to political campaigns, whether to individual candidates or thematic movements that support candidates, should be public. Here I take as my text the words of Supreme Court Justice Louis D. Brandeis. Sunlight, he said, is the best of disinfectants. In my view, it makes sense to give people full information about where money in elections is coming from, and then they can make their own decisions about whether it matters to their vote. These two reforms, limiting financial support of candidates to people, not institutions, and demanding transparency for every dollar donated to campaigns, would, in my view, be huge steps forward to achieving Abraham Lincoln's cherished goal of a government that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. بهذا نصل إلى نهاية هذه الحلقة من برنامج داخل واشنطن. إذا كانت لديكم أي استفسارات أو تعليقات حول هذه الحلقة، وخاصة حول دار المال في مضمار السياسة الأمريكية، أرجو أن تتواصلوا معي عبر تويتر على هاشتاغ Inside Washington أو أن تراسلوني مباشرة على @RobSatloff. سأراكم الأسبوع المقبل، وإلى أن ألقاكم شكرا لكم وإلى اللقاء.